that happened to me recently, and it was like, it took me back a little bit, because it was a setting where the recognition of how especially mothers view themselves and their role within the family, it was so much in my face that it took me back. So during COVID, I joined a fitness group, and it was holistic fitness. And we meet up once a week for accountability and kind of share our stories. And as we started, quite quickly started to get all of the excuses. I didn't have enough time. I had to do these with the kids, right? And so we called out that these are excuses. Like, you made time to feed your kids, so why not making time to take care of yourself? And I think, and then there were some moms were actually saying, like, I couldn't take time for self-care because it would disrupt my family.
Right.
And I thought, when you talk about the fact that the way you even have that internal talk, that your kids pick up on that. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that point, that sometimes moms feel by prioritizing everybody else and putting themselves last, like somehow that's doing the best for their family without recognizing that they're teaching their kids how to value each other.
Yeah, exactly. And so self-care is part of self-compassion, but self-compassion is much broader. So self-care means you do something, and it usually like takes extra time out of your day. You may not have time for self-care. You probably do have more time than you think you do, but you may not have a lot of time. But self-compassion, for instance, just being with the pain of not having time for self-care if you're really busy, you can practice self-compassion about being so busy, and you can actually model that for your kids. So self-compassion takes no time, right? It's just a way of relating to what's already happening when what's happening is painful or difficult or stressful, right? And then usually you find that when you do have more compassion toward yourself, you're more willing to find the time because you care, right? And you aren't guilting yourself and you aren't stressing yourself about it. But really the two, they're overlapping, but they aren't the same. As self-compassion takes no time. It's just the way you relate to what's already happening.
Yeah, I love it. I want to talk a bit about self-compassion as it relates to learning to love unconditionally.
Yes.
And really being able to accept the people in our lives for who they are. And I was wondering if you'd share a little bit about your own parenting journey and how you had to use compassion to get to that place.
Yeah. So, I think you mentioned my son is autistic. I think I mentioned it as well. And by the way, I have to say, I'm so lucky now. Like, he's 18. He is just a dream. He does the dishes without being asked. He's like, doesn't complain. He doesn't backtalk. Like, compared to my parents with neurotypical kids, I've got it much better. So I have nothing to complain about now. But when he was younger, he was much more of a handful. His autism was much more severe, and he'd tantrum, and he wasn't potty trained until he was 5, and all these things. And so what I found was that the more I could accept my own grief, my own disappointment, my own frustration, right, my own feelings, my own difficult feelings about being, having to parent. Having this aspect of my parenting, it actually did allow me to accept him more, right? So very, very much, the more I could just be with what is, with kindness, and, be there for myself, and it could hold my grief, then the more mental and emotional space I had to accept him unconditionally, right? So they really do help each other. And by the way, so like unconditional self-acceptance, there's a yin and a yang to self-compassion. So the yin is like the unconditional acceptance. We might, for someone else, unconditionally accept them and love them as they are. Ourselves, we unconditionally accept and love ourselves as we are. But sometimes people confuse acceptance with passivity, right? So maybe your kid or one of your family members, you might accept them, but maybe they're doing behavior that's not acceptable. It doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Sometimes we need to say, hey, you got to make a change. This isn't okay. We need to draw boundaries. As parents, we need to set rules up, right? We need to say what's okay. You can have boundaries with your kid while you love them unconditionally, but being passive is not being very good to them. They need boundaries. We need boundaries, right? And people get a little confused about that. So we can emotionally accept someone else and ourselves at the same time that we can say, you know, I'm sorry, this is what I need. This is the behavior I need. And if you can't give it to me, I'm not going to hate you, but there's going to be some sort of consequence, right? So
I love that. If you had to say to us, take this one thing and try it out for the next month so that you can try to build your self-compassion, what would that one thing be?
So a very easy thing is, so the trigger is going to be any sort of pain, any sort of like difficult emotion. It could be confusion, frustration, sadness, whatever it is. So that's your mindfulness self.
Easy at this time.
Oh yeah, any sort of thing. And then so just think, and then notice how you're reacting in relation to that pain. And just ask yourself, what would I say to a friend I really cared about who was going through the exact same situation? What would I naturally say? If a friend were to call me and say, you know, hey, you know, Nicole, this is what's happening to my life, what would you naturally say to that friend? And then just try it on with yourself in the same tone of voice, right? So the same kind of warm, supportive tone. You can, even if you want, put a hand can be very good for kind of feeling your own presence. So, you know, we can't touch our friends right now because of COVID. We can't touch yourselves, you know, don't touch your face. You can touch yourself, you know, and just say, you know, and just try it out. Put your hand on somewhere, just supportive, and just try saying to yourself what you would say to a friend, and see, look for yourself, the impact it has on you. Remember, you aren't like giving yourself a bunch of BS. You aren't saying everything's fine. Maybe it's not fine, you know, but you can say, I'm here for you. You know, I won't abandon you. I'm so sorry this is so difficult. You know, I care. Those types of things you can say, and they really do make a big difference.
I love it. Before I ask my last question, tell all of yours where we can find out more about your work.
Yeah, so very easy. One-stop shopping is selfcompassion.org. If you Google self-compassion, you'll find it. And so I have a lot of free resources. You can test your own self-compassion level with the scale I created. We've got a ton of research, actually the PDFs of the research articles. I have guided meditations, I have exercises, and then there's links if you want some more in-depth training. There's links to the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. You can take online training if you want to go deeper. But you don't, you know, before you take that step, you can just do a few of the practices. Like I have a practice called Self-Compassion for Caregivers. It's a video YouTube thing. It's about 7 minutes. You can try that out, and it's really good for parents, and see how you like it.
Beautiful. Okay, so my last question. What does it mean to you to live an empowered life?
Well, so I'm actually really into empowerment lately, especially female empowerment. This is the yang side of self-compassion, right? And so self-compassion is empowering, right? When we stop beating ourselves up, pulling the rug out from under us, when we stop, like, you know, just subordinating our own needs to those of others, and we can start to claim our power, right? And so for me, claiming my power is, you know, work fulfillment. I've got passion in my work. I'm very lucky. I've got a calling in life. So that's empowering. But I'm also really interested in helping to empower other women. For instance, the fact that women can't get angry. You know, anger is a powerful emotion. The fact that we can't get angry is a problem. Now, we don't want to have the yang anger without any yin. If we have anger without any compassion, then we're just like aggressive. We don't want that. But we can claim our power. We can, you know, take our place. We can say no. We can draw boundaries. We can say, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable what you just said, or whatever it is. That's an act of compassion. That's very empowering. So my new book is called Fierce Self-Compassion. It won't be out until next year, but it's all about female empowerment. So
can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us and for all your work. I think the basis of it, from my own experience, was helping me learn to be kinder and to love myself more. And then I have more to give away. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Lovely to talk to you, Nicole.